First Baptist Bonham, but of course you probably knew that because you're tuning in to our Facebook page. I hope you'll do me a quick favor if you happen to be watching with us today. Please take a moment to share this video. I've talked to several people that have enjoyed the videos, but not everybody knows how to share it. So usually down under the video on the left-hand side, there's a share button. You can share it live. If you happen to watch it later on and you still want to share it, then we'd love for you to do that too. It should still be under the post that you're viewing. But if you will, please share that with us. Also, like our Facebook page, visit our website at fbcbonham.com. And also, if you have a chance, usually either to the one side of the video or the other, or underneath, there's an opportunity for you to comment. Feel free to comment on the video, and if I have a chance, I'll try to look at those, and maybe we can answer some of them before we finish here. So today on our Family Friday session, we're going to be talking about no is a loving word. Now, you and I know that we live in a yes culture, and we live usually in a fairly indulgent culture, right? If it feels good, do it. We don't like any limits on our freedom. In a large way, we don't want anything to be right or wrong. As the Nike slogan goes, right? Just do it. Whatever feels good, whatever seems right, whatever we want to do, that's what we want to do. We like that freedom. And so in this way, our culture is an indulgent one, not a restrictive one. So no becomes a very difficult word to say in a lot of ways. Sometimes we don't want to say no to someone who's asking us to do something because we feel obligated to them. Sometimes we don't want to say no to whatever we want to do, even if it would put us in a dire situation. And we certainly don't like to say no to our children. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. And so no is a hard word to say, but in fact, it's actually a loving word to say. Now, this shows up in families in a lot of ways. One of the ways it shows up in my family is with Dad. That's not fair. And what I usually say is, that's too bad. But sometimes when your kids get older, they'll say, but Mom, all my friends are doing it, or everybody has a cell phone, or everybody does this, or everybody's going there. And we have a choice to either say yes or no to the many questions and desires that come up in family life. Now, as I started out, what I told you is that no is a loving word, and I want to take a moment to try to show that is the case. And the first reason that I think no is a loving word is because what no does is actually battles entitlement in our families, in our children, and helps us cultivate gratitude, which is actually something that I'm going to talk about next week, is how do we build gratitude in our children. So entitlement is really just the larger rationalization of selfishness. Not only do we want what we want, which is, of course, the key feature of an uncritical self-desire, but we begin in entitlement to believe that we deserve it. In fact, Kristen Welch, who's a Christian blogger, she says it this way: entitlement pops up as a buzzword in our culture today, but it's certainly not a new issue. Selfishness's path of destruction runs all the way back to creation, but entitlement takes selfishness and self-absorbed behavior a step further. Not only do we want what we want, but we feel like we deserve it. And parents make the problem worse when we endlessly give in to our children's demands. And so no becomes a loving word precisely because it helps us teach our children and others as well about the reason that not every desire is to be fulfilled. Not every want is to be given. And so no is a word that helps us battle that entitlement and teach something different, which is what I want to bring to you second, is that no is a yes to something better, or it should be. Now, this is true of our relationship with the Lord. We all know that God says no to many different things. Perhaps it's no to sex before marriage, or no to gossip about another person, or whatever it may be. And these no's, sometimes they don't feel good to us. We'd really rather do some of those other things. They appeal to our inward desires. But God says no to sex before marriage because he knows that intimacy within marriage is even better, that it's the fulfillment of his design. Or he says no to gossip about your friends because it's his yes to a better relationship with others that focuses on resolving conflict and having closeness and true relationship with one another. And so no is not a bad word. It feels mean sometimes. Sometimes people interpret it as us trying to be harsh. But we're not about killing fun for our children or our family when we say no. Because as I said, no is really a yes to something better. Let me give you a couple examples of this. So no to something for a parent to a child can be a yes, let's say, to patience. So we all know that people in general, but especially kids in particular, are impatient creatures. And we live in this instant gratification culture where, you put a Pop-Tart in the microwave and boom, 3 seconds later, it's good, right? Or you turn on the TV and boom, there it is. Or you hit a web page with your phone, and if it doesn't load in 10 seconds, you feel like, what is going on? Because we're impatient, and kids see this, they learn it, it's a part of our natures. But saying no to something, even if it's a temporary no, is often a means to teach our children that it can be yes to something better, yes to a wait, right? We're trying to teach our kids to wait while, for instance, in our family, wait while we talk to adults. Our kids are real bad about coming up and like patting you on the belly or whatever, say, daddy, 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 while you're trying to talk to another adult. And so we're trying to say, no, I'm not going to answer you right now. I'm talking to this person. When I'm done, then I'll talk with you. Of course, unless it's some sort of emergency or something like that. So no to something can be yes to building patience. No to something can be a yes to learning good work ethic and proper responsibility. For instance, recently our older son wanted to buy books at the local school book fair, which is a great thing, right? We want him to learn to read. We want him to enjoy to read and have that desire. But it would have been real easy just to say, yes, here's $10 or here's $15 to go and buy some books. Instead, what we decided to do was to have him earn the money, right? To say no to just giving him whatever he wanted, and to say yes to here's a job you can do. You can clean out the garage, and then we'll give you $10. And one of the things that we actually did is we paid him the $10 for doing a task, a job, so that he could earn his money towards the book fair books. But then I also gave him an additional $5 so that he could get something else that he wanted as well. So trying to teach that, build that both responsibility and grace into their experiences. A no to something can also be a yes to personal responsibility and facing the consequences of your choices. And so this is something I talked about last week, is that we cannot be our children's savior, right? There are some times when we need to protect them and help them, but there's a sense in which we have to progressively expose them to the nature of the world and certainly to the consequences of their own decisions. And so saying no to stepping in every time, or no, I'm not going to do your homework for you, right, is a means by which we actually teach them the bigger, the greater yes of personal responsibility, facing the consequences of our choices, learning maturity. I think one of the biggest things that no can do for us is being a yes to contentment. I mentioned to you that our children often talk about fairness. Well, that's not fair. Well, I didn't get this or whatever. And so no is, no, I'm not going to give in to your desire to have everything exactly equal, because I want to teach you that contentment is not about having everything you want, but knowing that in Christ we have everything that we need. And so I think a no is often a yes to learning contentment. And we'll talk about that a little bit next week as well. Now, so the first thing is, no is a loving word because it is a good word. It teaches things. It helps us to understand. But in another way, no is a loving thing because it's a necessary word. One of the things that is not always real popular as a parent is that one of the key responsibilities of parenthood is defining limits and setting boundaries. And this doesn't feel good. It's not an emotionally satisfying thing to do, but that's not really the gauge about whether something should be done or not. There's lots of things that are hard to do, and that doesn't mean they shouldn't be done. And so one of the key jobs of a parent is indeed to set limits and define the boundaries that exist. And so our kids need to, they need to understand these things so they can navigate the world, so they understand the nature of moral right and wrong, so they understand how relationships work. There's so many things that go into setting those boundaries and defining the limits that exist in life. Now, with younger kids, this is a little bit easier in terms of the authority structure that exists because, as we all know, right, we may have not wanted our parents to say, but because I said so, right? With young kids, we can often simply set those boundaries and rely on our parental power of because I said so to get them to do it. But saying no is also a means not merely of establishing the nature of the relationship between a parent and a child, but also a means to teaching. So with older kids especially, saying no gives us an opportunity to provide explanations about why no is no and why yes is yes. Right? Again, this may not solve the emotional reaction of our children to our no, but hopefully what it does do is begin to help our child form a picture of how wisdom is employed in decision making. So I'm going to say, no, you can't go watch that movie, not because it's bad to have entertainment, but because the movie carries themes and encourages actions that are not according to God's word or not according to what is a wise path for life. And a helpful follow-up for this is as you have these conversations with your children is you say, do you understand why I'm saying no? How would you phrase that for yourself so that they learn not merely that some things are outside the bounds and some things are inside the bounds, but why and how we can determine that? Because you want your kids to grow up and have the ability to make those decisions for themselves. So let me give you a couple of things that we can do based on this, that no really is a loving word and a word that we should learn to say with our children so that they learn those boundaries and they understand that some things are right, some things are wrong, some things are good and wise to do, and some things aren't. Now, similar to last week, I told you that the earlier you start something, the easier it will be, and the later you start something, the harder it will be. The same is true of no. The earlier in your child's life that you say no and begin to establish those boundaries, the easier it's going to be. The later you start, the harder it will be. And this is just the way of life. The more freedom we have, when that freedom becomes restricted, we want to buck and rebel against it. However, I will say that it's never too late, right? It's never too late to say no to something that is not right to say yes to, right? There is always room and a place to do that. It just may be harder. And as I said, just because something's hard doesn't mean that it's bad to do, right? Saying no will be hard. It'll be hard because other parents don't say no. They give in to whatever their kids want to do, no matter what it is and whether it's right or not. It certainly won't be emotionally fulfilling, but this is part of being a parent, being able to bear the burdens of life for your children and teaching them that just because something's hard doesn't make it bad. And, of course, your kids won't like it, right? Maybe they'll call you mean or unfair. They'll roll their eyes or give you dirty looks or complain about you to their friends. But at the end of the day, parenting is not a popularity contest. It's also not how good you feel about yourself or anything like that. Parenting is a divine responsibility entrusted to you by the Lord, and you and I have to take that responsibility seriously. And we will answer to Him for how we've done it, even if we didn't particularly like how it felt. In fact, what I would say is sometimes the harder thing to do is actually the better thing to do. Certainly it wasn't easy for Jesus to hang upon a cross, but it was the divine plan, and so He does it. Now, your kids are probably going to keep asking you even after you say no. My kids do. They keep asking the same questions, for the same things sometimes. And so you're probably going to have to employ that consistency that we talked about a couple weeks ago to make sure that you keep doing the right thing over and over and over again. Remember this as we close up, that all boundaries and all discipline feels like a rub to our children as they're growing up. But later on, right, the payoff comes. So in parenting, what we're really doing is playing the long game. We're not playing the short game. We're playing the long game. Remember Hebrews 12:11. It says this, all discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet to those who have been trained by it, afterwards it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. So just remember that as a parent, saying no, establishing those boundaries, having the discipline is not about what you can achieve merely in the moment, but what you're going to achieve 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now as your children understand that the power of no is the yes to something even better. And they'll learn that even God himself says no to some things so that he can say yes to something even better. All right. Well, I'm glad you joined with us today. I hope that you had a good time. Feel free to make a comment in the comment section if you have questions or suggestions or just anything that's on your mind as well. I hope that if you're in Bonham here, you'll visit us on Sunday at 10:45 for church, 9:30 for Sunday school. Make sure to check out our website, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.